From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. It was a busy day in the Alabama Legislature as the House and Senate met again for the 10th legislative day. That means that we are now a third of the way through this 30-day session, at least in terms of meeting days. They'll probably go until about May 20th. We'll start in the House tonight, where lawmakers debated the school choice bill that Governor Kay Ivey called her top legislative priority going into the session. House Bill 129 from State Representative Danny Garrett is dubbed the Choose Act. It would allow parents up to $7,000 a year in tax credits to fund their child's tuition at a private school or other choice option. It would also allow homeschool parents up to $2,000 to cover homeschool expenses. There were some changes to the bill made in committee, including capping the total amount that could be credited at $500 million and requiring any private schools participating to share testing data with parents and the state. That made the bill somewhat more palatable to education groups, but House Democrats remain opposed and argued on the floor that school choice options ultimately undermine public schools.
Under the bill, a private school that's participating, or any school that's participating, has to be one of the legitimately reputable certified accrediting organizations in the country. So you've got to be a member of one of these institutions that has been fully accredited in compliance with those rules. There's evidence of that all over the state.
Okay,
so
if the schools are accredited, are the teachers certified?
Private schools today have also, parochial schools, they have all different criteria within their accrediting organization. We're not.
No, I just want that one question answered. Are the teachers certified? They have to be in public schools.
Public schools, though, are under we're under federal guidelines, under the State Department of Education guidelines, and there are requirements that we impose upon the public schools. In the private schools, private sector, they're able to establish their own. They have more flexibility, more freedom in how they, in flexibility in how they establish their curriculum and how they, who can teach that curriculum.
And I kept looking at public versus private. And I'm sorry, I can't, everybody's getting up here talking about transparency and accountability. I don't think the two are equal in this bill. Because when you look at a public school, they have to provide for all children no matter what. Private schools don't have to do that. When you look at a public school must comply with all state laws and federal laws. Private schools, they don't have to do that, right? In this bill, they don't have to. They just operate under whatever parameter that they're operating under. And then when you look at how the monies are earmarked for things that we're doing, like we've got unfunded mandates on public schools, like for the Literacy Act, for the Numeracy Act, which are all great.
The Choose Act passed by a vote of 69 to 34 and now goes to the Senate. It also included another amendment from State Representative Joe Lovern, clarifying that if any students take advantage of choice options, all Alabama High School Athletic Association rules still apply. That mostly has to do with residency as it applies to playing sports. Upstairs in the Senate, members debated bills aimed at making it easier to enter the nursing profession and to stay in it. Senate Bill 25 would clarify the scope of practice for certified nursing support technicians. Senate Bill 26 would tweak the Alabama Nursing Loan Repayment Program to allow more to take advantage of it. Both bills are sponsored by State Senator April Weaver.
We believe by creating a stackable credential for education, number one, we hope that we will increase the quality of health care in the state of Alabama by allowing for a licensure through the Board of Nursing. But number two, we're creating a stackable credential, and we are hopeful that we will encourage a lot of people to continue to grow their education and continue on the pathway to nursing.
Senators also considered and passed Senate Bill 59 from Senators Arthur Orr and Tim Melson. It would require public schools to offer instruction in CPR and electronic defibrillators. The bill comes after Orr performed CPR on Melson during a trip to Korea last year and literally saved his life.
For weeks and months with the experience you underwent, but because of this, all these thousands and thousands and thousands of young people will be trained that may not have ordinarily been trained in CPR and using the defibrillators. I guarantee you, in their lifetimes, lives will be saved because of what you went through. So God's got a plan. We know that. And, thanks for being the guinea pig.
Would you mind telling that story again? Because I don't remember any of that. No, thank you for carrying this, Bill.
I don't think you want to remember it, and I wouldn't if I were you.
Well, I'm just thinking it must have been somebody else right now. So thank you for carrying this, Bill.
Hey.
I'll speak with Senator Orr more about that bill and others later in the show. Big news today from Governor Kay Ivey and leaders involved with the broadband efforts here in Alabama. Ivey announced an investment of nearly $150 million to bring high-speed internet to areas in Alabama that need it most. The plan includes giving out 66 grants worth about $148.3 million to 16 internet companies. These companies will use the money to make high-speed internet available in 48 counties. We've heard a lot about middle mile projects that serve as kind of connectors off the main internet thoroughfares. These funds would go toward the last mile, with more than 5,000 miles of internet cables connecting almost 54,000 places like homes, businesses, hospitals, schools, and libraries.
We have received national recognition for this innovative approach. In 2021, Alabama ranked near the bottom nationally in broadband connectivity at number 47. By last year, we had risen 23 steps to be among the top 24 states in broadband readiness.
When we talk about our state, the best place to work, raise a family, and how we do that is projects that help people and helps our state succeed. This is the new Alabama, and I am certainly proud to be a part of it.
It's a great example of Alabama collaborating and working together. You've got the private sector, you've got government, you've got different industries, you've got people in the north, the south, everybody collaborating on what's going to be great for Alabama's future. And we all know how important the internet is and how important that coverage is going to be across our state. I've said before, Alabama cannot be all that we want her to be if she's only growing along the interstate. She must be growing in rural Alabamas with opportunities there, just as is the case in our most successful urban areas.
The issue of in vitro fertilization was still very much a buzz in the State House today, as Alabama continues to generate national headlines over IVF clinics pausing their services due to the Alabama Supreme Court's ruling saying frozen embryos are to be considered children under an Alabama tort law. State Senator Tim Melson followed through on his promise to file legislation addressing the problem by clarifying in Alabama law that IVF clinics can't be sued as a result of embryos being damaged or destroyed. He wants that bill through the Senate and up to the House by the end of by the end of this week. That is Senate Bill 159 if you want to follow along. Meanwhile, House Democrats are planning to file a constitutional amendment that would clarify personhood language there and place the question on the November ballot. To be clear, legislative leaders have said that they are confident a simple law change and not a constitutional amendment will suffice to protect IVF and get the clinics back operational. Governor Kay Ivey said she's monitoring the issue closely and wants a bill to reach her desk soon.
Here in Alabama, as I said last week, we work to foster culture of life, and that includes IVF. The legislature is diligently working on addressing this issue as we speak, and I anticipate having a bill on my desk very shortly while ensuring that the legislature has time to get this right.
Governor Ivey also commented on the issue of gambling after reports that senators have their own ideas different from what the House passed a few weeks ago. She said she supports the House plan and won't sign just any bill.
Illegal gambling, y'all, is rampant, just rampant. First of all, it's illegal for it to occur. And second, the state's getting nothing back in return for it. So we got to fix this, and we got to get it right. So we're working hard with the House passed a good bill. I can support the House passed version, but I'm meeting with the leadership today to see about what the Senate's thinking, because I won't sign just any bill.
Ivy said she was planning to meet with Senate leaders on the issue today. When we come back, I'll sit down with State Senator Arthur Orr, chairman of the Senate Education Budget Committee, for updates on a number of education topics. Stay tuned.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts. Keep up with what's happening with Capital Journal.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Senator Arthur Orr from Decatur. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Todd. Good to be with you.
It's always good to be with the chairman of the Senate Education Budget Committee, but there are some other legislation I want to talk to you about before we get to the funding stuff. You had a bill on the floor today dealing with CPR training in high school classrooms, and this is not random because I had Senator Melson on the show the other night telling the story of what happened in Korea with his cardiac arrest. You performed CPR. He really credits you with saving his life. It's an amazing story. But talk about how this bill came about.
Well, I think you gave it away because, but for that horrific incident, wouldn't be sponsoring the bill. I did go to Senator Melson beforehand and asked if he minded if I sponsored such a bill, or he could sponsor it, and he said, no, you handle it, and I asked him to co-sponsor it. He's been very gracious, but for what happened to him, again, we wouldn't have this bill, and hopefully it will lead to someone's life being saved down the road, because CPR is very important, and we've added a defibrillator type training as well that high school students will have to receive, because that's important as well, that they know how to operate one of those units here in the 21st century, where they're becoming more and more prevalent. But
yeah, I remember Representative Gray talking about that in terms of the high school football and some of the cardiac events and things like that, the defibrillator. Let me ask you, had you had CPR training? Is that how you knew what to do in that emergency situation? I
had several times earlier in life, but boy, in the crisis of the moment, you just say a prayer and hope for the best, because the alternative at the time, we knew what it was if it didn't take steps to intervene and try to revive Senator Melson at that time.
Mm-hmm. He said 40 minutes between you and others performing CPR. So what a blessing it was that you were there and were trained. So it's a great issue.
And it's quite tiring in 90-degree heat on a concrete floor, and your knees and your back and
I can't
whatever.
imagine.
That's the reason, it turned into a platoon effort where bending over and, it was, again, it's taxing on somebody even almost 60, but, you got to be in good shape. So important.
And well trained. Another bill you had about dealing with those still in high school, young adults, not adults, still in high school, being able to work and more freedom and flexibility to have after-school jobs. Tell me about this.
Well, this is a bill I had actually in the 23 session, but I never filed it because as you know, I carry a lot of bills and ideas and thoughts that I have, and then I noticed that Representative DuBose from Shelby County has a similar bill, but this is a bill to remove the government from family decisions of whether a 14 or 15-year-old can have an after-school job. All the regular work requirements or labor laws stay in effect, such as child can't work more than 3 hours on a school day, and cumulatively those hours are limited on a weekly basis, I believe, to 18 hours a week. So no dangerous jobs, no backhoes or slaughterhouses or things like that. All those workforce laws stay in place. It just removes the requirement under current law that the superintendent give permission to a 14 or 15-year-old before they can get employment. So why should the government have a say in that? That should be between the child or the student and their parent to make that decision as to what's best and whether the student can juggle having a job and also being a student at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all remember our after-school jobs, and that was a really important way for me to make, gas money and things like that.
And learn the value of work.
Absolutely.
At an early age and see the reward of work. And, that's not such a bad thing here in the 21st century.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, so you had the CHOOSE Act, the Education Savings Account downstairs. Because it's a revenue bill, it's going to have to start down there anyway. It looks like it's coming back up, to the Senate. But y'all have already done some work in committee on this bill already. So do you expect it to move fairly quickly?
I would think so. There may be a tweak or two in the Senate, but Representative Garrett has done an excellent job of hearing from concerned parties in the education community, making those changes in a substitute bill that he brought in committee last week, and then has gotten the bill favorably passed out of the House, and so now it's in the Senate. Most of the heavy lifting has been done, and then I would assume the Senate will pass here shortly in the next week or so.
That's interesting, and going back just even a couple of months ago, even leading up to the session, you'd have thought that was one of the most controversial issues of all, but it seems like the negotiations, the conversation that you and Chairman Garrett have had with coordinating with the governor's office, with the various groups involved, it's a lot more smooth than maybe a school choice bill might have otherwise been.
You're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head, Todd, because Governor Ivey's team, education team, invited Chairman Garrett and myself in early on, and they had different thoughts at the time. But working with Chairman Garrett and the governor's staff, they were very amenable to changes and suggestions. Those were made, incorporated. And then, like I said, here with the educational family, as we call them, still making reasonable changes and suggestions. It's been a healthy process, and I think we've got a strong piece of legislation.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about the budget. The Education Trust Fund, this is always the big heavy lift of the session each year. I realize I guess it starts downstairs technically this year, but y'all will always work together on this stuff. What should we be looking for? Where are we in terms of the budget, projections, compared to last year? Are we up? Are we down? What should we be thinking about in terms of what kind of budget to expect?
Well, if we, the supplemental that created a lot of attention last year, well over $2 billion, is a fraction of that, about a quarter of that this year. And so that number comes down considerably, and that's one-time funding.
That's extra money anyway.
Extra money that you see. The budget in general is growing at a healthy pace. It's over 6%. And so the governor made her recommendations with it. 2% teacher pay raise, I think, will float along, bringing our entry level teachers up to among the highest in the Southeast, among our peer group. Higher ed will see increases. So I think it's going to be a healthy exercise for the budget and a good year.
One bill or one area of funding I wanted to ask you about is the principal legislation. You brought this legislation really offering some policy reforms to the principal role, but it's all, policy is nothing without funding and targeted funding and everything. So where are we with that? Talk about the principal bill, its implementation, and how it's going to be funded this year.
Right. So we've done the numeracy and literacy acts, and it seemed important to focus on what I'm going to call the coach of the building, the principals, and make sure that they receive the training and professional development that they need, and develop a pipeline even with assistant principals and those that want to become principals, as opposed to kind of the ad hoc system where if you have a good teacher and there's a vacancy in the principal slot, a lot of times the superintendent will just appoint that teacher to be the principal, and with increased compensation usually they take it, but they've not been trained and prepared for the managerial decisions that they'll have to make on the scene calls regarding decisions that are very important to that school and to the school system. So the bill increases the pay if they get the training. So that's about a $30 million expenditure, but we want to invest in principals. And then I believe it's Representative Gidley has a bill to reduce the divisors for principals, where we can put more principals in our schools, assistant principals in our schools, and help support our principals by having a chief lieutenant or someone there to support and help them across schools in Alabama.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's such a key role, or roles, because you're talking about, like you said, a coach, assistant coach, talking about discipline problems, talking about supporting teachers. So has the feedback been pretty good from the education community just having that bill in place?
Yes, the new law now, they're excited about it, and look forward to working with class that will develop the training modules for the teachers, the professional development. And we have high expectations, so we just didn't want to give them a good raise, but hopefully give something back that'll be beneficial to the children.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned literacy and numeracy acts. Those were some of the major reforms passed over the last several years. This is going to be the first year for the Literacy Act accountability provision to finally go into effect. What's been your conversations with Dr. Mackey and others involved in this about how prepared we are to do that? Because I know it's not just a cutoff. We've got all summer, and there's a lot of support things in place to help get students across that finish line to fourth grade.
Yeah, well, fortunately, we're working with a governor who has supported the funding for the Literacy and Numeracy Acts, because it's quite expensive. The reading coaches, the after-school programs, the pull-out sessions with additional support staff, the summer schools for those that may be slow in reading or math, all those interventions cost money. So, but we've put our money where our mouths are, and we expect good things to happen here in the months and years ahead by giving those supports to children, rather than just socially promoting them along and hoping they get it down the line. That hasn't worked out so well for some children.
Mm-hmm. And she said in her State of the State she would veto any attempt to further delay those accountability provisions. Have you heard any talk from your colleagues?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. COVID is gone, and that delayed us a little bit, understandably, but we're ready to roll and to push forward with the program that we have.
Mm-hmm. While I've got you, one more thing. We talked at the Legislative Issues Breakfast about sort of the combined issues of education and the workforce, because they do commingle. And it's like this idea of short term. We know we have a workforce problem, shortage. There are plans for the Lieutenant Governor to put into place. I know you've been working on this issue with your colleagues. And then longer term, how to raise expectations, raise performance in education. So talk a little about that, how our short-term workforce goals and immediate goals can also work with our long-term goals of getting a better educated product from our high schools to go into that workforce.
Well, I think it starts with a strong foundation, and that goes back to the Literacy and Numeracy Act, because so many times, again, children were being promoted and moved along and graduating sometimes, and they're functionally illiterate. That doesn't help them at all, or they'll drop out because they're frustrated with school, and just doesn't end well. Given that strong foundation will certainly help them achieve more in the classroom, but then achieve more in the workforce. And we are spending a good bit of money in the workforce on workforce development, career tech, training, career academies, all of these things coming to bear. And something that you'll see moving in this year's budget is the Helping Families Initiative, because that helps keep children in the classroom. We heard Mayor Woodfin say a couple weeks ago about
50% of the children, if I'm recalling correctly, in Birmingham were skipping school and not attending, or some very high number. And how do we keep children? We need to keep children in school, and this works. This is a program that works with the district attorneys that we're funding to keep them in school, keep them focused, and hopefully get them on into the workforce, and not give them the option of spinning out of control.
Certainly something to follow. A lot of issues on your plate, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you the rest of the week.
Thanks.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night at the same time with more coverage of the Alabama Legislature right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.